She expected her best friend to open the door that night, but the person standing there changed everything she thought she knew. Mira had always trusted her instincts, but that evening, something felt off from the moment she stepped out of her car. The sky was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like it is waiting for something to happen. And the house at the end of the street, her best friend Lanie's house, glowed with only one soft light in the front window. She walked slowly toward the porch, hugging her jacket around herself. Lanie had texted earlier, saying she needed to talk. Her message had been short, almost rushed, and it left Mira with a strange, unsettled feeling. They usually talked every day. They shared everything from silly jokes to the heavy moments no one else fully understood. So when Lanie had called her over so suddenly, Mira did not hesitate. But now, standing in the cool night air, she could not shake the sense that something was wrong. The house looked the same, yet also different, as if someone had rearranged the air around it. She stepped onto the porch. The wooden boards creaked under her shoes, louder than usual in the quiet neighborhood. She lifted her hand and knocked gently, expecting Lanie's cheerful voice to answer. But seconds passed, then more. No footsteps, no soft laugh, nothing. Mira frowned and knocked again, a bit louder this time. "Lanie, it's me." Still silence. She reached toward the doorbell, but before she could press it, the lock clicked. The doorknob turned slowly, almost hesitantly, as though whoever stood behind it was unsure. Mira stepped back, her breath catching in her throat. When the door finally opened, her heart dropped. It was not Lanie. A man she had never seen before stood in the doorway. He was around Mira's age, maybe a little older, with tired eyes and a look of surprise that matched her own. He held the edge of the door as if anchoring himself. "Can I help you?" he asked softly. Mira blanked, taken aback. I'm here to see Lanie. She asked me to come." The man looked over his shoulder into the dimly lit hallway before turning back to her. His voice was gentle, but a shadow hid beneath it. "I'm afraid Lanie isn't here." Mira felt a small twist in her chest. "What do you mean she isn't here? She texted me less than an hour ago." The man's expression shifted, almost pained. "I know this is confusing. Maybe you should come inside. I can explain." Everything in Mira's instinct urged her to step back, to leave, to call Lanie first. But something in the man's voice, calm, steady, almost heartbreaking, made her pause. "Who are you?" Mira asked. "My name is Rowan," he said quietly. I'm Lanie's brother." Her eyes widened. Lanie had never mentioned a brother, not once in all their years of friendship. Rowan must have seen the confusion on her face. He stepped aside slightly, giving her a clearer view of the living room. A suitcase sat near the couch, half-sipped. A coat hung carelessly over a chair. Nothing about the scene looked violent or dangerous, just deeply unsettled. "I'm sorry if this feels sudden," Rowan added, "but Lanie left earlier today. She didn't tell you?" Mira felt her pulse thump in her ears. "No, she didn't say anything. She just said she needed to talk." Rowan exhaled slowly, as if he had been holding in more than just breath. "She wanted to tell you something important, something she struggled to say for a long time." A faint chill wrapped around Mira's shoulders. What was it? Rowan hesitated. "I think it's better if we sit down. There's a lot you need to know." Mira looked at him, really looked. He wasn't threatening. He wasn't cold. He looked worried. Worried for her. Worried for Lanie. Worried for something he had not yet found the courage to speak aloud. She swallowed. Then, with a quiet nod, she stepped inside. As Rowan closed the door behind them, a soft unease brushed the back of her neck. She didn't know what she was about to hear, but she knew one thing with absolute clarity. Whatever Rowan was about to reveal, it would change everything. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. And as she sat down on the edge of the couch, Rowan took a slow breath, as if preparing to open a door neither of them could close again. The moment Rowan began speaking, Mira felt the room tighten, as if the truth itself was holding its breath. Rowan sat across from her, his hands clasped so tightly that his knuckles had gone pale. The small lamp beside the couch cast a warm glow across the room, but somehow that warmth did nothing to ease the cold knot forming in Mira's stomach. She waited, saying nothing. She could tell he needed a moment to gather himself. Finally, Rowan lifted his eyes. "They told me you were the closest person to her," he said, "and after reading her messages, I think they were right." Mira felt her throat tighten. "I don't understand. Where did she go? Is she in trouble?" Rowan shook his head gently. "There's no danger, nothing like that. But Mira, Lanie didn't leave because she wanted to." He paused. "She left because she felt she had no choice." Mira leaned forward, confusion growing thicker by the second. "No choice? Why? She could have told me. She always tells me everything." Rowan gave her a look filled with something heavy, something like regret. "People tell the truth," he said softly, "except for the parts they don't know how to say out loud." Mira swallowed. What was she scared to say? Rowan opened the half-sipped suitcase at his feet and pulled out a small journal. It was lavender-colored, the exact shade Lanie loved. He held it carefully, almost reverently, before offering it to Mira. "She left this on the kitchen table," he explained. "And she asked me to give it to you." Mira stared at the journal for a moment before gently taking it. Her hands trembled just a little. Her name was written on the cover in Lanie's familiar handwriting. "Mira," Rowan continued, "Lanie didn't disappear. She went to see someone she hadn't spoken to in a long time." Mira looked up sharply. "Who?" Rowan hesitated. Then he said, "Our mother." The word struck the room like a quiet blow. Mira blinked, stunned. But Lanie never talks about her family. She only ever mentioned her dad, and even that was rare. "That's because our mother left when we were young," Rowan said. "Lanie took it the hardest. She carried that hurt for years, pretending it didn't matter. But last week, she got a letter." Mira's fingers tightened around the journal. "What did it say?" Rowan looked down, his voice low. "That our mother was sick. Very sick, and she wanted to see Lanie one last time." Mira's breath caught in her throat. "Oh, Rowan, I didn't know." "She didn't want anyone to know," he replied. "She didn't want to be a burden, especially to you." Mira shook her head, a wave of emotion rising in her chest. "She's never been a burden to me, not once." Rowan gave her a small, almost sad smile. "I believe that. She believed it too, but she also worried, more than you realized. She thought leaving suddenly might protect you from worry." Mira felt tears sting the corners of her eyes. "But she didn't even tell me she was hurting." "That's why she left you the journal," Rowan said gently. "She wanted you to understand everything she couldn't say." Mira looked down at the lavender cover again. She had the sudden feeling that opening it would open something inside her, too, something she wasn't sure she was ready for. Rowan leaned back, taking a slow breath. "I know this is a lot, and I know it probably feels strange to hear all of this from someone you just met, but Lanie trusted you more than anyone, and she trusted me to explain." Mira wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. Where did she go, exactly? "To her mother's home," Rowan replied. "About 3 hours from here. It's a small town near the coast." Mira nodded slowly. A quiet determination settled into her chest, a soft, steady courage she hadn't realized she still had. "I want to see her," she whispered. Rowan looked up, surprised, but not disapproving. "Are you sure? It's late, and she didn't want you to worry." "She's my best friend," Mira said. Then she added, her voice breaking only slightly, "I deserve to know what she's going through, and she deserves not to face this alone." Rowan studied her for a long moment. Then he gave a slow nod. "Then I'll take you, if you want." Mira looked at him, really looked, and realized something quietly important. Rowan wasn't just delivering news. He was carrying his own worry, his own grief, his own hope. And somehow, without meaning to, he had placed all of it in the same room as hers. A soft silence settled between them. The kind of silence that gently reshapes two lives. Finally, Mira closed her fingers around the journal and whispered, "Let me read just a few pages first." She opened it slowly, and on the very first page, in Lanie's fragile handwriting, she read a sentence that made her heart stop. "Mira, there is something I should have told you long ago." The words blurred slightly as her eyes filled again. What came next? She wasn't ready for it. Not yet, but she turned the page anyway. The first lines of Lanie's journal hit Mira so deeply that her heart felt as if it had forgotten how to beat for a moment. Mira sat very still on the couch, the journal resting in her hands like something fragile and warm. Rowan waited quietly across from her, respectful, giving her space, though she could sense he was just as anxious to know what Lanie had written. Mira took a slow breath and began reading aloud in a soft, trembling voice. "Mira, there is something I should have told you long ago, but I didn't know how. I didn't know what it would do to us." Mira paused, her lips tightening. She felt Rowan watching her gently, but she kept her eyes on the page. Another paragraph followed. "I've been carrying this fear for years. The fear that if you knew the truth, you might look at me differently. Not with anger, not with disappointment, but with distance." Mira swallowed hard. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. She really thought I'd distance myself? After everything? Rowan leaned forward slightly. "When someone has been hurt before," he said softly, "they start believing every truth will push someone away." Mira stared at the next lines. "My mother leaving was the first heartbreak I ever knew, but it wasn't the last. And somewhere along the way, I started believing the people I love will always leave me, one way or another." Mira felt her chest tighten. She knew Lanie carried pain from her childhood, but she hadn't realized how deeply that pain shaped everything. Another page. "I didn't tell you any of this because I didn't want you to think I was weak. I didn't want you to feel responsible for holding me together." Mira closed her eyes, her voice cracking ever so slightly. "I never thought she was weak, not once." Rowan's voice was calm, steady. "She knows that, or at least part of her does, but the part that fears being abandoned speaks louder sometimes." Mira turned one more page. Here, Lanie's handwriting looked shakier, as if written through tears. "And there's something else, something I really should have told you long before now. You're not just my friend, Mira. You're the person who brought light back into my life when I didn't even realize I was living in shadows." Mira froze. Her heart fluttered with confusion, warmth, and a quiet ache all at once. What does she mean by that?" she whispered. Rowan let out a slow breath. "I think she means exactly what it sounds like." Mira's pulse thumped loudly in her ears. Lanie had always been gentle, loyal, deeply caring, and Mira had always felt something warm in her presence, something she had never named. Not because she didn't feel it, but because she never thought to look closely. She stared down at the journal again, unable to turn the page yet. Her hands trembled slightly, and she tried to steady them. Rowan's voice softened even more. Mira, Lanie didn't run away. She went to face something painful, something she's feared for years. But the person she trusted with her truth was you. Mira blinked rapidly as tears blurred her vision. Then why didn't she tell me before leaving? Why didn't she talk to me first? Rowan exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. Because she didn't want you to feel forced into anything. She didn't want her feelings to become your responsibility. Mira pressed a hand to her forehead. All the years of shared laughter, late-night talks, quiet support, they all looked different now. Not unfamiliar, just deeper, warmer, more meaningful than she had realized. She glanced at Rowan. His expression was full of compassion, even though he had just met her. He was carrying his sister's feelings, protecting them, hoping the truth wouldn't break anything between them. Mira wiped her eyes again. What else does she say? Rowan nodded toward the journal. You can read more if you feel ready. Mira hesitated, but then she turned the page. There were more entries, some short, some long. Stories about moments Mira barely remembered, moments Lanie cherished, moments that meant far more to her than Mira ever realized. One line stopped her completely. If you're reading this, Mira, then I wasn't brave enough to speak the words myself, but I pray that one day you'll understand why. Mira pressed a hand to her chest. Her breath trembled. She looked up at Rowan, her voice unsteady but sincere. I need to see her. Not tomorrow, not someday, tonight. Rowan met her eyes, surprised but deeply moved. Then we'll go. I'll drive. Mira stood slowly, clutching the journal close to her heart as if it were a part of Lanie herself. Rowan reached for his keys, but before he rose, he asked softly, Are you sure you want to confront all of this tonight? What she wrote, it could change everything. Mira nodded, her voice gentle but firm. I know, but some things are meant to change. Rowan held her gaze for a long, quiet moment, a moment that felt like the crossing of a bridge neither of them expected to stand on. Then he said, Let's go find her. They stepped toward the door together, and just as Rowan reached for the handle, Mira felt a soft tremor of fear and hope twist inside her, two emotions pulling in opposite directions, yet somehow holding her steady in the middle. Whatever waited for them at Lanie's mother's house, Mira knew it would reshape the way she saw everything, her friendship, her heart, and the truth Lanie had carried for so long. The quiet road ahead felt endless, but Mira knew the real journey wasn't the miles, it was the truth waiting at the end of them. Rowan's car hummed gently beneath them as they drove through the night, the headlights cutting soft paths through the dark. The town was far behind now, replaced by quiet stretches of trees and distant glimmers of farmhouse lights. Mira sat in the passenger seat with Lanie's lavender journal held close against her chest. Every now and then she opened it to reread a line, as if trying to understand it more fully each time. Rowan glanced at her occasionally, not to interrupt, but to make sure she was all right. She appreciated the silence he offered. It wasn't empty, it was steady, supportive, the kind of silence that understood without asking. After a while, Rowan finally spoke, his voice gentle. You're very important to her, you know? Mira looked out the window, her breath fogging the glass a little. I always knew we were close, she said softly, but I didn't know she felt that deeply. Rowan nodded, keeping his eyes on the road. Lanie has always loved quietly. She gives her heart in little ways. Most people never notice how much she's giving until it's gone. Mira's fingers tightened around the journal. That's just it, she whispered. She gave so much, and I didn't see all of it, not the way she saw me. Rowan offered a soft, reassuring smile. Seeing something late is better than never seeing it at all. Mira exhaled shakily, her thoughts circling around Lanie's words, those trembling confessions on the pages. She had always felt a warmth around Lanie that she couldn't explain. Not excitement, not confusion, just comfort. A soft, steady kind of peace she didn't find anywhere else. She had never tried to name it because she didn't think it needed a name. But now, everything felt differently illuminated. A few minutes passed before Mira asked quietly, "How did you find out about her feelings?" Rowan shifted slightly in his seat. "She told me once," he said. "Not in detail, but enough for me to understand that she cared for someone deeply, and that she was terrified that person didn't feel the same." Mira's breath caught. "She never told me she was scared." "That's because she didn't want you burdened by her heart," Rowan replied. "She loved you enough to hide the parts she thought might complicate your life." Mira closed her eyes for a moment, letting those words settle. Lanie had always protected her, even from truths that belonged to both of them. As the road curved along a quiet stretch near the coastline, the faint scent of salt water drifted through the air. The night had grown cooler, but somehow Mira felt warmth rising inside her. "Rowan," she said softly, "do you think she's okay?" He hesitated, then answered with honesty, "I think she's hurting. But I also think she's stronger than she believes. And knowing you're coming, I think that will matter more than you realize." Mira looked down at the journal again. On one of the pages she had reread multiple times, Lanie had written, "If I disappear for a while, please don't think I'm running from you. I'm just trying to find the courage to face the parts of myself I've been afraid to show you." The words echoed in her heart. Mira pressed her palm over the writing, whispering, "She doesn't have to hide from me, not anymore." Rowan gave her a soft, understanding look. "You really care about her." Mira hesitated, not because she doubted the answer, but because she finally understood how much that answer mattered. "Yes," she said quietly, "I really do." Another stretch of silence followed, but now it felt warmer, more certain. The car turned onto a narrow coastal road lined with tall, swaying trees. The moonlight shimmered over the ocean in the distance, throwing silver reflections across the waves. "We're getting close," Rowan said. "Her mother's house is just past the next turn." Mira's heart thudded softly, not out of fear, but out of a tender, unsteady hope she hadn't expected to feel tonight. She looked at Rowan. His face was calm, thoughtful. He carried the same worry for Lanie, the same quiet love, though his was the love of family. "When we get there," Mira asked gently, "what should I say to her?" Rowan took a breath, choosing his words carefully. "Say what's true, whatever that truth is for you. Lanie has lived her whole life unsure of how people feel about her. You can be the one person who shows her clarity instead of uncertainty." Mira nodded slowly. That felt right. That felt like the answer she'd been searching for since she opened the journal. As they reached the small town, the roads grew narrower and homes appeared farther apart. A single porch light glowed at the end of a gravel driveway, warm and steady like a lighthouse in the dark. Rowan slowed the car. "That's it," he said softly. "That's her mother's home." Mira stared at the light, feeling her breath catch. Her heart felt too full, not of fear, but of longing. Longing to see Lanie, to understand her pain, to tell her she wasn't alone, not anymore. Rowan parked the car. Mira placed the journal gently on her lap. She reached for the door handle, her hand trembling with emotion. Rowan spoke one last time before she stepped out, his voice quiet but steady. Mira, whatever happens, just remember, she wrote all those words because you mattered to her more than anyone. Mira nodded, tears gathering in her eyes. She took a deep breath, then she opened the car door and stepped into the cool coastal night, toward the porch light, toward Lanie, toward the truth that waited behind that quiet door. Her heart trembled, but her steps were steady. She was ready, even if she didn't yet know what waited on the other side. When Mira stepped onto the porch, she felt as though the entire night was holding still, waiting for one truth to finally be spoken aloud. The gravel crunched softly under her shoes as she walked toward the warm glow spilling from the window. The coastal air carried a faint chill, wrapping around her like a question she hadn't answered yet. Behind her, Rowan waited by the car, giving her space. He wasn't rushing her. He understood that some moments needed to unfold slowly. Mira reached the door and raised her hand to knock, but before she touched it, the door opened. Lanie stood there. Her eyes widened the moment she saw Mira, as if she had been wishing to see her, but never imagined she truly would. Her hair was slightly messy from the long emotional day, and her cheeks held traces of tears she had already cried. But she was there, real, standing only a few feet away. "Mira?" Lanie breathed, her voice soft, almost disbelieving. Mira felt her own breath catch. "Lanie," she whispered. For a moment, they didn't move. They just looked at each other, two hearts standing in the quiet doorway, both carrying things they hadn't known how to say. Lanie stepped back slightly, as if making room. You came all this way?" Mira nodded gently. "You didn't think I'd let you face all of this alone, did you?" Lanie's lips trembled. Her eyes glistened again, but this time the tears weren't from fear or confusion. They were from something much softer. "Come in," she said, her voice barely steady. Mira entered the small living room. The home felt old but warm, the kind of space where every chair had a story and every blanket smelled faintly of comfort. Lanie closed the door behind them and leaned against it, as if she needed its support. She looked at Mira with an expression full of emotions she'd been holding too tightly for too long. "I didn't want you to come," Lanie whispered. "Not because I didn't want to see you, but because I didn't want you to feel sorry for me." Mira turned toward her with a gentle, steady voice. "I'm not here because I feel sorry. I'm here because you matter to me." Lanie swallowed, her throat visibly tightening. "You read the journal?" Mira nodded. "I did." For a moment, Lanie looked away as if bracing herself for rejection or disappointment or something equally painful. But Mira stepped closer, her voice soft. "Lanie," she murmured, "I wish you had told me sooner. Not because I needed answers, but because you didn't deserve to carry all that fear alone." A tear slipped down Lanie's cheek. She wiped it quickly, embarrassed. "I was scared you'd pull away," she admitted. "Scared I'd lose you." Mira shook her head, her own eyes warm with emotion. "You could never lose me. Not for telling me the truth, not for feeling something real." Lanie finally looked up, and the vulnerability in her eyes was so raw that Mira felt her own heart ache. "I didn't want my feelings to become a burden," she whispered. "They're not," Mira said softly. "They never were." Lanie hesitated. "What did you feel when you read it, honestly?" Mira took a slow breath. She thought back to the quiet nights they'd shared, the laughter, the comfort, the unspoken closeness she never tried to label. She thought about how safe Lanie made her feel, Not in a dramatic way, but in the kind of way that settled deep inside a person and stayed. I felt, she paused, searching for truth, not perfection, seen, loved. And I realized I've been carrying something too, something I didn't name because I didn't understand it. Lanie's breath trembled. What do you mean? Mira stepped closer until they were only inches apart. Her voice softened like a confession made in candlelight. I cared for you more deeply than I admitted to myself, she whispered. I didn't realize how much until I read your words and felt them in my heart. Lanie blinked, stunned. You did? Mira nodded. Your feelings don't scare me, Lanie. They matter to me. You matter to me. For the first time that night, something gentle lit up Lanie's face. Not quite a smile, but the beginning of one. A fragile hope she had tried to silence for years. She reached out slowly, as if afraid Mira might step back. But Mira didn't move. She held Lanie's trembling hand with quiet certainty. In that moment, neither of them needed grand declarations. The warmth between their hands said everything. After a long, tender silence, Lanie whispered, My mother is resting. It's been a hard day. I didn't know how to handle any of it. Mira squeezed her hand gently. You don't have to handle it alone anymore. Lanie breathed out shakily and leaned her forehead against Mira's shoulder. Mira held her softly, grounding her, letting her cry in a way that didn't break anything, only healed. After a moment, Lanie whispered through tears, I'm so glad you came. Mira brushed a thumb across Lanie's cheek, steady and warm, and I'm not going anywhere. They stood there quietly in the soft glow of the coastal night, two hearts finally speaking the same language, not rushed, not forced, but honest. Whatever came next, the healing, the conversations, the new path they would walk together, they would face it side by side. And Mira knew without any doubt that the person who opened Lanie's door that night didn't just shock her. He started a journey that brought her exactly where she was meant to be.